brave decision, one that would change my life. This is a story about going back to where it all started. Let's go! Street car. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are sticking to the topic of Tokyo because I have a story that I really want to share, and it has a very close connection to why I started creating in the first place. Now, a big disclaimer before I start, I am not a pro at this, but that's not to say that I don't think I'm getting good at it. I'm just not as disciplined or as consistent as some of the other YouTubers out there. And to be frank, I've got a bit of imposter syndrome. Me putting my work out there, sometimes you can't help but think, do I belong amongst all these other people who are sharing their work? And 5 years ago was a time where I probably felt this more than anyone. So picture this. I was in medical school, I was in my final year, this was about 2019, and we have something called an elective placement, which is where, as a medical student, you're encouraged to try and experience healthcare outside of the UK. So I got my placement out of the way and I decided to quickly cram in a trip to Japan. I had never been there before. This was my first solo trip because I wanted to go alone and see how that was like. And I was at a point during medical school where I was really having doubts about what I wanted to do in the future. I thought I had it all figured out, and then all of a sudden I start dabbling in entrepreneurship. I start, thinking about creating online, and my head is in a really weird space. This is like, it's coming down to crunch time. But all I knew was that if I didn't take a risk or a leap now, it would be much harder in the future. And so there I was standing at Shibuya crossing. I remember exactly the moment and where I was standing, and I was listening to an audiobook by Gary Vee. Now, anyone who knows Gary Vee knows his style of speaking. It's very motivational. It's very much, you know what you need to do. You need to go and do it right now. And that kind of advice is not always for me, but what it did do is bring all those doubts and all those fears to the front of my mind, because when he was saying, do that thing you need to do, all I could think about was, I need to take that leap into creating. I need to finally do what I've been afraid of doing for so long, which is to put myself out there, create a personal brand. That night I went back to my hostel in my little pod, and I spent hours on my phone thinking, how am I going to present myself to my friends and family and tell them that I'm essentially going to try and build a personal brand? What are they going to think of me? And I was so afraid of putting myself out there, and so I didn't consult with anyone. I created a new account, made it public, and I shared it with all my friends on Instagram. Okay, that was the one thing I did, and I said, this is a new public blog essentially. And back then, you know what that means. That means that you're gonna try and be an influencer, creator, or try and build a personal brand, and that's essentially what I was trying to do. But I was so nervous. As soon as I created it, I shared it with everyone, and then I just turned my phone off and I went to sleep because I was so anxious about the response. But in all fairness to me, I had done it. That was probably the biggest and hardest step I had to take along this journey. But it wasn't over, because now I actually had to do what I set out to do. So Shibuya, you will always have a special place in my heart. That is where all of this started. Now, like I said before, I'm still an amateur when it comes to this stuff, okay? I don't consider myself as a professional because I still treat this as a hobby, as something that I really want to grow and learn about and, figure my way through it. There's so much left to learn for me, and I'm just generally enjoying the journey. And let me prove to you why I'm still making mistakes today. I really messed up. I knew at the back of my mind that Japan gets really hot in the summer. Like, I'm talking like almost unbearable, but I still booked it in the midst of the summer heat. Now, I'm not joking about this. People literally are carrying umbrellas in the street to protect them from the sun. Like, it's that strong. And not only was it like 38 degrees centigrade, but the humidity was maxed out, meaning that you walk out and number one, you're feeling like you're overheating within like 5 minutes. I kid you not. And I got some melanin, I got some brown skin. I was dying. And that affected our whole trip. Like, I wish I could say, you know, Japan is very bearable in that summer heat, but there were times where we were just like, you know what, like, let's just stay in the apartment. Like, I can't take this anymore. Nevertheless, you can't be upset in Japan. Like, this is one of my favorite countries I've ever been to. It is buzzing, it is eccentric. Everywhere you look, there's something interesting going on, whether it's the people and the stories behind what they're doing and the lives they're living, or the certain practices that the Japanese have, the cultural elements, the tourist spots. Everything about Tokyo and Japan just fascinates me. So if you thought I was done telling you how much of a noob I was, you're mistaken. Let me tell you about another big screw up which happened to me. So when I went on this trip, I took my film camera, this little bad boy right here. Now, 35mm film is taken on these little film cartridges, for those of you who don't know. And it's based off like a chemical layer which is really affected by light, okay? If light like hits the whole cartridge, for example, if I open it around the back mid-roll, it ruins every single picture. Now, when you take these cartridges through airport security, what I hadn't learned earlier on is that the X-ray machines that you put your luggage through can really distort the images that you've taken, or the film in general. Depending on what film you have and depending on how many times you pass that film through those scanners, it can really add weird noise, it can create this banding effect. And I learned about this about a few months before I went to Japan. Nevertheless, I passed my film through the London airport scanners to the layover scanners in and out, and then in Japan, and all the way back on the return journey, I did the exact same thing. That's like 7, 8, 9 passes through airport security. And I don't have a super trained eye when it comes to these little things, but the grain added to my film photos and some of the banding was incredibly noticeable. Nevertheless, loads of the pictures still came out beautiful. Now, I was quite hesitant to share this story with you guys for a lot of different reasons. The main one being is that I don't like admitting that I have imposter syndrome. I don't like confronting or putting out into the open my insecurities when it comes to creating online. I mean, some of the creators I follow out there do amazing work. It's very easy to get caught up in comparing yourselves with other creators. And so I looked at this trip to Japan and I thought to myself, you barely even went out as much as you should have because of the summer heat, which is my mistake. Half of my film photos have kind of been messed up because of my mistake. And there's other various little issues that came up along the trip, and I thought to myself, man, you really need to up your game because this isn't up to scratch. And you know, with anyone who has that kind of perfectionist nature like I do, I don't want to put up subpar work. I don't want to share with you videos which I'm not proud of. And I was borderline thinking, is what I've captured worth sharing right now? But then I started thinking, maybe I deserve a bit more credit. 5 years ago, I didn't know how to operate a camera. I didn't know what ISO, shutter speed, aperture, I didn't know any of that. And here I am with a digital camera and I know the ins and outs of how to use it. I've made dozens of films, I've made 50 plus YouTube videos, and I've done exactly what I set out to do, which was make those YouTube videos which I enjoy, make travel films which I enjoy, summarize my trips and my experiences with my friends and family, and condense those into works of art that I can be proud of and that I can look back on one day and say that, you know what, I've created a lasting memory here. I continue to upload on that same Instagram account and share my pictures and videos with the world. I created a newsletter and shared my words and my thoughts with over 800 people over a course of 2 years. And that's every single week. And now I've picked up a wonderful medium, which is 35mm film, which is incredibly difficult to learn and very unforgiving. And I think I've become pretty good at it. And I may not be a true professional, but I'm doing exactly what I set out to do. And so I guess I kind of wanted to just share the fact that sometimes we really get caught up in the next milestone and the next milestone that we forget to take a second and look back and see how far along we've come. Because there's always going to be another milestone, there's always going to be another checkpoint. But if we're always putting our head down and just focusing on moving forward, we're never going to have the time to look back and appreciate what we've accomplished. and enjoy the journey along the way. And so on reflection, that's what I really loved about this trip. It was full of imperfections along the way, it was full of mistakes, and it proves that I'm not a professional yet, but I care enough to do what I said I wanted to do. I care enough to take the leap of faith and share my work with people. And I think that's the brave thing to do. It's not actually, whether or not you get 100,000 views or 1,000,000 views on that video. It's, did you pick up your camera, make something, put it all together and share it online? For me, that's the win, and that will always be something that I'm appreciative of and I won't take for granted. But on a more personal note, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has watched any of my videos, who has interacted, who has shown some love. It all makes a massive difference to motivating people like me to actually share my work, share my content, and just, do it for the love of sharing, which I've always enjoyed. So whether or not I have 100,000 followers or 1,000,000 followers or just 1,000, I'm perfectly happy doing exactly what I'm doing right now, which is this. See you in the next one.